A big test for me is, would I see it again? And the answer is no. Hi, I'm Kate. Let's talk theater. Specifically, Tammy Faye the Musical on Broadway, which just announced its closing on December 8th after only having opened on November 15th. I think there are a lot of reasons why this musical did not work out. I have a couple thoughts. We're going to talk about them. I'm going to do my makeup while we're talking about it because it's Tammy Faye musical. It feels like the right thing to do a weird eyeshadow look as we talk about this. We are going to talk about some serious topics, primarily essay, because allegations are a part of this musical and kind of my main motivation for even making this video and kind of sharing my thoughts. So obviously, be prepared to hear about that. I'm not going to do it too detailed, too gratuitous, but it's going to be an important piece later in the video. So, Tammy Faye the Musical. Let's go. It's based off of Tammy Faye Baker, later Tammy Faye Messner. We're just going to call her Tammy Faye. I saw this on, I already forgot primer, that's fine. I saw this on October 19th. So I did see this on its very first preview. I have the bag to prove it. And so take that with a grain of salt. In theory, they could have made some changes. I don't think that they made changes from what I've heard from other creators, but just keep that in mind. Let me know below if anything I'm saying kind of seemed to maybe be tweaked a little bit by the time that it opened. But the reality is not a lot of people will see it in its full production and sort of its frozen state because it's only going to be open for about 3 weeks. So this show originally opened in London, and it does really make me wonder, first and foremost, the audience differences. I think that Tammy Faye came at a really bad time for America. I do wonder if people in London, I think that's hair dye, if people in London thought it was funny, and maybe we don't. And I think that that's going to be one of the main things. So what is Tammy Faye about? Tammy Faye is about Tammy Faye. It goes from the beginning of her sort of journey into becoming a televangelist with her husband, Jim Baker. And, it starts with her finding out that she has cancer. Then we kind of loop back and reflect upon her life. I thought that was honestly a weird storytelling device in and of itself, but I digress. So that happens. We learn about Jim Baker. We learn about Jerry Falwell and other televangelists. It's about PTL, the company/network that they started. It's about Reagan. It's about Jim Baker being a pervert. It's about way too many things. And I think that is one of the biggest flaws with this musical. This musical is just trying to do way too much. And so when you try to be about everything, you end up becoming about nothing. I feel like that is something that I've thought about a couple of different musicals lately. I'll say Limpico was definitely one of those. I felt like they tried to do way too much, didn't really feel like that was a point. And I think that that's a big complaint with Tammy Faye. What is the point? I think it's very possible to span a long time and cover a lot of different issues and characters. I think Suffs does a really good job of that. I think Hamilton does a good job of that. I think some of the differences, right? Hamilton, it's all through the lens of Hamilton. So we're seeing and getting to know all of these other people. That's definitely hair dye. I dyed my hair last night with a box. Hamilton's about a bunch of people, but ultimately only about how they intersect with Hamilton. And so I think that makes a really big difference, right? It's all through the lens. Suffs, for instance, it's all about these different people, but ultimately they're working towards the same goal. So they can all sort of move in the same direction. And it feels like Tammy Faye had neither of those things going for it. It was sort of about everything. Again, everything and nothing. I feel like you have to pick sort of a point. You have to pick kind of a theme. You have to pick something. And it just felt like they wanted it to be about religious satire, but also like take Tammy Faye's story seriously, which those don't really go together. They wanted to be a little hee-hee-ha-ha about religion and politics, but I just feel like that's not something American audiences are really looking for right now. I absolutely think that there's a time and a place to use theater to process really serious things, but it's not funny. It's not funny. We are continuing to live through the very serious consequences of the ways religion have infiltrated American politics, the way Reagan changed our politics. Reagan's in it. Leave us alone. Little jokes about making America great again. Like, do we want this? Maybe British audiences thought it was funny. They're a little bit further from it. It was also in 2022 that this even happened in London. It was maybe a little bit of a different time. Maybe we don't think it's funny. Maybe we don't think it's funny in the US to joke about those things, at least not right now. Or at least not like, you know, we can be lighthearted and maybe have some dark humor, but it's all about the tone. I think in general, we're seeing audiences not want to think about very serious topics. I'm definitely going to do an eyeshadow look of like blue and gold, like the Tammy Faye poster. It's not actually their poster. Well, the British poster and the backdrop. I think I have a picture. I'll put it up if I do. You know, I think I personally believe we should use theater to process hard topics. I think Sups is a great show for that. I think The Notebook is a great show for that. Both of those shows are closing and lasting less than a year on Broadway. I don't think Broadway audiences want that right now. I think they want to escape. And so to have a show that's tackling real topics, but then not even taking them seriously, felt really no good. So all in all, Tammy Faye, kind of about nothing, kind of hits a little bit too close to home with a tone that I just don't think is really going to work for American audiences right now. But I think ultimately my biggest question is like, who cares about Tammy Faye? Do people even care? Who is really looking for that? And then I think that if you are looking for that, because the story is spread so thin, if you're looking for a pure biographic musical about Tammy Faye, I don't think you're gonna really get it. And so then are they making really anybody happy? And I think that that's huge. You have to get people through the door. And if the people you're getting through the door are like the Tammy Faye fans, and then you kind of don't really focus on Tammy Faye, or really, in my opinion, effectively tell the story through her eyes, then they're gonna walk out and not necessarily recommend the musical. And so if you're looking to learn about Tammy Faye, yeah, you're gonna learn the basics, but I also think a downfall of this musical is that it didn't really feel like it took a stand. It didn't feel like it took a stand. What do I mean by that? I think biographic musicals, I'll call back to Olympika because I think they butchered this as well, but it's very yellow. I'm a little scared. If you are writing a biographic musical, I need you to decide motivations, feelings. We don't technically know what was going on through Tammy Faye's head while she was living her life and making these decisions, but you need to decide as a storyteller. You need to take some creative license in deciding why she was doing, what she was thinking, yada, yada, yada. And I just feel like they didn't really do that, right? So we're learning about her life in terms of like fact, but that's all something we could just go on Wikipedia and learn about. And it felt like they weren't really adding any. And again, it's not guaranteed fact. This isn't a documentary. I don't think anybody's looking for guaranteed fact. But I need you to give me something because now it just feels like there aren't really characters anymore. It's just acting out what happened. Does that make sense? I also felt like the songs really lacked tuning in to the character and what they're really dealing with. They felt kind of superficial and super forgettable and just really like vague Elton John 80s pop ballads. I felt like nobody really shined. I mean, Tammy shined as like the actress. Katie Braben was incredible. But in terms of having like this really standout moment, it just felt like nothing really landed because how invested could we be with the storytelling that we're being given? So I personally think that the strength of this musical was the set. And the set was amazing. You really felt like you were part of the PTL set, and I loved how they used the little TVs. I'll put a picture of, this was post curtain call up here, and how you could sort of see, they used the wings and as part of the set, so you could kind of see the wings looked like a television set, looked like they had little, you know, hair and makeup stations and things like that. I thought that was really clever. But then it almost felt like the set was doing more to kind of let us in to the story than the plot, characters, music. And again, the set's important, but it can't be working alone. It can't be the only one doing that. It just felt like everything was a little lackluster. And the reality is that they were taking this show. This was their the Playbill anniversary cover. Here's the actual cover. They're taking this show, and it's okay. Maybe you don't really even know Tammy Faye. Maybe you go to see Christian Borle because he's like a Broadway girly. He doesn't really shine in it. They're charging $400. If it had made it to the end of December, to sit in the front orchestra would have been $400. Broadway's expensive, and I know that it has its reasons for being expensive, but for it to be that expensive, you need to be delivering. And you can't kind of just give us something that's fine. Like, that's just not where we're at. And I think I'm surprised it closed very quickly, but I have the feeling that the creative team saw what kind of everybody was seeing, and that, like, you know, oh, they need time to build an audience. They didn't give, or they didn't give themselves time to build an audience because they closed within 5 days of opening, or announced closing, sorry. But were they ever going to find an audience? So those are kind of my general, a little bit unorganized, to be fair, thoughts on Tammy Faye as an actual musical, as a form of entertainment. Now I'm going to throw some highlighter on, and then we're going to talk about a serious problem that I had with the storytelling that I think we need to talk about. Okay, so as I said, this next part is going to be a little more serious. I'm going to be looking down a lot because I have my computer in front of me, and I'm going to be referencing some pretty specific information and want to get it right. Specifically, I'm going to be looking at a transcript from Larry King Live on CNN because I want to accurately share Jessica Hahn's telling. Again, I'm going to try to do this in a way that is very respectful, not talking about anything in a way that's gratuitous, just kind of bare bones, while still giving it the attention it deserves. And I think I'll probably do a better job than the show did, because this really bothered me. In the musical, there is a young woman, Jessica Hahn, who comes to work as like an intern or something at PTL. Has a total like doe eyes for Jim Baker. Jim Baker is basically her guy. And so there is an absolute power dynamic going on here, right? And it is shown that he has, in the eyes of the show, an affair. Like, she's clearly uncomfortable with the, I'm trying to be careful with my words because of YouTube as well. So they have an affair, a physical one, let's call it, but that's sort of the lens that Jim Baker has. Jessica Hahn says it's SA. It's an allegation because this was never brought to court. I personally believe her, but that is my opinion. These are allegations. But allegations that I think the show should have taken seriously. The show kind of plays it off like she shows up to cheer him up because the producers kind of see that he's losing it. He's horrible at being on TV, and, you know, he's all emasculated because his wife's doing better than him. So the producers say, you know, go spend some time with him, wink, wink, cheer him up. And she has a moment where she admits that she felt like she couldn't say no because he's Jim Baker and he's like her god. And she's clearly uncomfortable, and maybe the word that I would use is that she feels violated, and that's sort of implied. But it's way too implied, I would say. It's way too implied, and details are left out, and this is where I have the problem with it. So again, obviously it's still icky. It still made me uncomfortable watching it. It's clearly still, I believe that any sort of coercion does not equate to valid consent, and therefore would be SA. Now, legally, there's different, right? There's, you know, different types, but ultimately, not in a court of law, SA is SA. It just didn't feel and again, this is technically my opinion of how I'm reading it. Let me know in the comments below if you saw this. I just felt like it was so heavily implied that an audience member that wasn't really thinking about coercive consent, wouldn't necessarily believe that it's essay and was just like a bad experience or something. So right. I'm looking at a transcript, again, from CNN, Larry King Live, interview with Jessica Hahn from July 14th, 2005. I'll link it below. And something that Jessica Hahn had said, again, I'm going to be looking down because it's right in front of me and I want to get everything right, well, King asks if she'll ever live down the reputation. And she says, no, never. People will always consider me a cartoon character, a bimbo. You know, they will never give me credit. They will always consider that I brought down an empire. And it made me really sad to read this because it felt like the show kind of implied that too. Her story, her account, also discusses substances and physical violence. I'm not going to get into it. You'll look at the transcript yourself because, again, I'm trying not to be super gratuitous here. And so the show talks about power dynamics and through there some coercion. But her story also alleges substances and physical violence. And maybe they were worried they would get sued. Because I get it. This is all alleged. This was, he was not convicted in a court of law or anything like that. Again, if you're going to bring this in, bring it in. You did not have to half cover this and create a narrative that, my opinion, more closely resembles probably what Jim Bakker has said, compared to what Jessica Hahn has said. And that is incredibly invalidating, not only to Jessica Hahn, in my opinion, but to any survivor trying to tell their story. And again, they didn't have to handle this. This could have happened off screen because this is a musical about Tammy Faye, not Jim Bakker. Although, yeah, it's supposed to be about Tammy Faye. This could have all happened off screen. They could have used this as a way to sort of just tell like what was being reported and moved on. But they didn't. They chose to have this be a pretty significant story. This is my opinion. I think it's a storytelling device to have Jim Bakker kind of come off favorable by the end. I don't know why they want him to be favorable. This is a musical about Tammy Faye. She moved on and got married to somebody else. He got out of jail, just found a new televangelist wife, like, immediately, and became super radical in his, like, teachings and his beliefs. Like, he spreads dangerous information, really insensitive and harmful information. Why do we have to like this guy? Not to mention, right? Not to mention the allegations. So for them to go out of their way to make him seem favorable just boggles my mind. We don't need to do that. We do not need to do that. What is my in conclusion of this piece? In conclusion, yeah, super disrespectful telling of essay allegations by this show. Please let me know if you saw it after me. Again, I saw it during its first preview. Did they make some changes? Does it even matter? I don't know. Did I like Tammy Faye? I didn't hate it, but it's kind of a show that has simmered with me a little bit longer, clearly. I've found out more information, and that, in hindsight, kind of changed my view of the show. I think it was just not the time. It was never going to be the time. So, all in all, Tammy Faye had a lot of flaws. Obviously, 3 weeks is surprising to me, but ultimately not surprising. When the critics don't like it and the word of mouth isn't great and people just aren't really coming, and then you kind of have some of these other issues, things maybe not being taken as seriously as they should, and the tone just not maybe being appropriate for the story that they're telling. I think they just needed to make some choices as to what they were trying to say, and in the end, it was kind of just a jumbled mess with a really, really lovely set. A really gorgeous set. Shout out to all of those people. The cast, obviously amazing. Katie Braben has mostly worked on the West End. I hope she stays over here for a little bit and I get to see her again, because she was an incredible light in a messy production. But all in all, yeah, rest in semi-peace, Tammy Faye. I'll give you a little bit of peace. I think you can have that much. And so, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on Tammy Faye the musical, on some of the things we discussed today. If you want to know a little bit more from me about my experience, thank you for sitting through this kind of semi all over the place rant, semi-serious conversation. Please don't rip me to shreds for how I do my makeup. I am in no way acting like I know what I'm doing. And if you enjoyed the video, like it, share it, subscribe, do the things. Follow me on TikTok at TheaterKates if you want some short form content from me. And I will see you next time. Bye.